Hello, Blizzard fans! This is FalconPaladin coming to you with yet another daily Blizzard upload. This is a community feedback update dated August 28th, which is yesterday. Walnut brought this to my attention because he posted a review of this on his channel. I will link you to the channel in a card right up here. And let's see what Davey has to say. Here's an update for a lot of what's been being discussed over the last week. Macro mechanics. Yes, this is a topic that is on every single StarCraft 2 player's mind right now. Overall, the coolest thing we're seeing is the freed up clicks going to more interesting parts of the game, and we worry that some of the races have become too easy to play, and that doesn't seem to be the case. We agree with the Korean pros and community on this point, and that because StarCraft 2 is already one of the most difficult games to master by far out there, and Legacy of the Void added much more skill needed to play, helping out on this end looks to be the correct move. With that said, there are definitely issues we'd like to improve. So what they're saying is we are concerned that making the Queens auto-inject, getting rid of Chrono Boost, and getting rid of Mules would make the game too easy to play. Now, I'm not sure if I agree with that. As Zerg, absolutely. It's much easier to not have to worry about injecting on a specific rhythm and a set timer every whatever. Even if you're out microing in the middle of a battle, you got to get back to your hatcheries and inject, and you could lose battles that way, but you know, it was definitely very difficult. Not having to do that is a lot easier, I have to admit. So I'm going to have to agree with that one. So let's see where else they're going here. Terran's mineral income rate in the early mid-game took a big hit. Yes, no mules means you get less minerals for sure. The scan has become so frequent it doesn't look to be as interesting for the game since Terran can play while seeing so much more than before. That's also true. In the games that I've seen with Terran, basically they're scanning the entire map all the time, and it's kind of nuts. And so if that is something that Blizzard's worried about, I can understand that. Protoss lost a potentially cool choice in terms of what specific things to Chrono Boost per situation. So that's very true. That was always kind of a fun thing for Protoss, is obviously in the early game you Chrono Boost probes, unless you're saving that Chrono Boost for a Warp Gate, because you're doing a 4-gate or a 5-gate or something crazy like that, or you want to Chrono Boost out your Blink, or things like that. And now that's just gone. Everything you do researches at a time, a set time. There's no way to affect that. And it's just less for Protoss to worry about. I can definitely understand that. Next up, Zerg choice between Queen and additional hatcheries became a bit more muddy because Queens cost less for less larvae per time now. So yeah, that's very true. Less larvae per time is something I noticed in the games that I played, is that you have a lot less larvae to play with compared to manually injecting. So they said, however, these are the things we'd like to try to keep going forward. Reduced clicks per race surrounding macro mechanics, potentially increasing both players' interaction with creep spread more. Now the Zerg players can more easily dedicate more effort in this area, bring back some of the necessary components of each race, but not go all the way back in strength per mechanic. And we like the fact there can't be 10 to 20 mules in the late game quickly mining out future bases, and we would like to keep this component. So that's something they're concerned about at the pro level, is that in late games, super macro games that go into 30, 40 minutes, at that point the Terran has, 10, 15, 20 command centers maybe. They throw down a whole ton of mules on a base and mine it out in just like 3 or 4 minutes, and it's kind of nuts. So they want to get rid of that. So what do? So here's what we're looking at internally. This is nothing they have currently planned out. Nothing that's going to happen for sure, but here's what they're trying to do. Chrono Boost is back. Reduced in effectiveness per time, no longer costs energy to cast, and starts defaulted to being cast on the Nexus. So the Chrono Boost is free, essentially. I guess it's on a timer. Protoss players will be able to switch the Chrono Boost on a Nexus to any building of his or her choice, and until it's switched out again, it will remain on that building forever. So Chrono Boost, it looks like it's reduced per time. So is it just always casting? Is that what's going on here? So Chrono Boost is just always casting on your workers until you tell it to go cast on your cybernetics core or on your robo or facility, or in your Twilight Council. That's what it looks like. It says this way we will bring back the interesting choice, the choice part of Chrono Boost in a slightly nerfed state while having minimal number of clicks. As for newer players who have never even clicked once, they would still benefit the whole game from each of their Nexus always being Chrono Boosted. Okay, so Nexus always have Chrono Boost running. That's interesting. So that probably make Walnut happy in that he can actually use Chrono Boost to get that Blink out faster, to get that Warp Gate out faster, to get that +1 attack up out faster, and then send it back to the Nexus to get those workers coming out too. We'll have to see how that works. If they ever implement it, actually. Terran Mule is back. Reduced in harvesting rate, no longer costs energy to cast. Has a cooldown equal to the time it takes to generate 50 energy and is auto-cast by default. So, free mules, basically, doesn't cost energy at all. You can still use your energy for scans, and it's auto-cast on your mineral patch. So, Mule will have a casting range and will only be usable within the radius, so that in the late game, orbitals themselves must have to move closer to the mining bases in order to drop mules, multiple mules there. Okay, so that's nice. That's what we talked about earlier. Scan and supply drop energy costs will be increased to compensate for the free mule cost. So yeah, so basically we're making scans less prevalent, supply drops less prevalent, but still allowing newer players to not be so focused on mules and allowing professional players also to not be so focused on mules. So just everybody needs to think less about mules, but you still have the benefit there. Still have the increased mineral income that Terrans are used to. With this version, we can solve the issue of Terran early game income rates, solve the end game Terran mule case, and also have no increase in the number of clicks needed to mule effectively in games. Alright, makes sense. Next up, Zerg. Keep spawn larva as auto-cast, but increase the larva count use per to 3. Alright, so I'm okay with that. Again, as a Zerg player, yes, it was hard to keep up your inject timings, but it was so worth it because you could have 15, 16 larvae available to you on 3 hatches and just make a whole ton of lings at once or a whole ton of roaches at once. And now the queens are doing a great job. They're doing perfect jobs injecting, but you don't have that much larva available to you. Maybe you'll have 10, maybe you'll have 8 available on those 3 bases, and just so difficult to kind of adjust to that. So increase the creep spread rate and increase the creep decay rate. So basically making creep spread get out there faster, but if a tumor is killed, it moves back faster towards the Zerg base. So anyway, back to this one. Yeah, so I mean, it's not a huge bump, but it does give the Zerg more larvae to play with, but not as much as they had when they were manually injecting, so keep that in mind. I wonder if Stefano's 11-minute Roach Max is viable with this 3 number here. So the first change is to make the benefit of having the queen very clear, and now that players have more effort spent on creep spread, we wonder if the creep interaction between players in Zerg games will be more interesting in terms of spreading creep versus clearing out creep tumors on a more regular basis within the game. So yeah, just kind of more action in the middle of the field rather than back at home, I think is what they're trying to do here. Adept. We've reverted the Adept cost nerf. With both this cost nerf as well as the nerf to offensive pylon warpins, the unit lost too much strength in the early game. We were looking for a minor nerf to help out other races defending against early Adept pushes, and we're hoping to keep them still remaining strong in the early game, and the offensive warpin nerf looks to be a good start already in this direction. We don't want to overreact and nerf the unit too much. Man, I just cast a game that will show up on my channel later where somebody just basically went mass Adept, and it was amazing. It was so effective. So I don't know if making them cost less. So a cost nerf makes them cost more, right? So cost nerf, offensive warpins lost too much strength. I think that's what it is. So adepts are cheaper now. However, another thing we've been exploring in this area is to have a more interesting upgrade for the adept other than just a health buff. Per your suggestion, we're trying to see if a damage upgrade is more relevant for this unit. We're also discussing other possibilities for this upgrade slot, and we'll keep you guys updated going forward. So, making adepts hit harder. I don't know about that. Oracle Revelation. We've been getting feedback around this ability for a long time from our community and one of our favorite casters from South Holland. Overall, it doesn't compete well with Observer Detection, and although it is more effective in certain specific situations, such as countering lurkers or speed upgraded banshees, it is also a big nerf. What the heck is a speed upgraded banshee? Can you get speed upgrades on those? I'm so embarrassed to not know that. Anyway, it is also a big nerf against certain specific situations, such as clearing out creep tumors. But because this new way for oracles to detect fits the unit much better, it is a cool difference from how the observer works and clearly has some advantages. We'd like to push this version and see if this will ultimately be a good change in how the oracle detects. We're currently trying out a version where the revelation cast range is increased to 12, so that against a majority of the threats out there, it'll be possible to keep the oracle alive much easier when trying to detect enemy units. Yeah, that's true. You don't see revelation a lot just because they have to get super close to cast it, and if you have air, anti-air, it pretty much dies immediately, so Protoss don't like it too much. For example, when trying to hit lurkers with revelation, it'll be much more difficult for the Vipers to pull the oracle in to kill them. And Vikings will also have a much more difficult time taking oracles out when they try to come in to detect Terran units. This way, although the strength and weaknesses of revelation hasn't changed, haven't changed, it'll be possible for Protoss to more reliably use oracles as detectors more often. Alright, fair enough. Maybe we'll see more of that. Tempest, it's pretty clear that Tempest's role is needed more than ever in Legacy of the Void due to the units they counter being much stronger, such as Broodlords, Carriers, BCs, and even new additions such as Liberators that Protoss, going only ground, struggle heavily against. Alright. However, the redesigned Tempest isn't working out as well as we'd hoped. The main reason is that we've added an activated ability to replace what the Tempest normally does in HOTS, but the ability added isn't very interesting. There's no real counter to the ability being cast due to it being an instant one-click thing where the opponent really doesn't have any responses to other than use this unit before it dies. That's true. Therefore, we believe the HOTS version is just better for this unit, and a role change to this unit is not a good idea due to the Tempest's role being more needed than ever in Legacy of the Void. We've decided to revert this unit back to its HOTS version. Alright, so no more disintegration. They're going to do that extra damage to massive. And I think that'll be interesting to see. Because they're absolutely right. Disintegration, it was just a one-click thing like they said here. And your only response was use this unit before it dies. You couldn't save it. You couldn't transfuse it. You couldn't heal it. You couldn't repair it. It just died. So, Zealot damage on charge. We fully agree with the majority of your feedback in that 30 damage is way too much. We made a mistake here because there was a bug internally where Zealots were not always dealing damage on charge, which we weren't aware of until the very close to the release of the patch. We fixed the bug right before the patch went out, but forgot to double check to see what that means in actual games. Fortunately, we're still in the beta, so there was no real issue of players losing tournament money due to this. But even so, we will try our best to make sure things like that don't happen even in the beta going forward. So yeah, they basically said there was a bug they weren't aware of. That's been out for a long time, right? Zealots were not always dealing damage on charge. Yeah, I mean, that's been a thing since Wings of Liberty beta, so if they haven't found it before now, that is one sneaky bug. I can understand that, though. I'm in QA for a software company where I live, and yeah, sometimes these bugs show up in very specific positions, and they're very intermittent, and they're very hard to see, so that makes sense that they didn't find it until now. We've been exploring with much lower damage on charge internally, and what we're finding is something we've known and been talking about for a long time. It's very difficult to do a minor buff to such massive tier 1 units because the impact of a minor buff adds up due to the ability to effectively mass these units so easily in the later stages of the game. We're not yet sure what the best course of action on this area is, but we'll continue exploring. For the next balance patch, we'll greatly reduce this number, but we're not sure yet if the added damage for this upgrade is correct in the long run. So yeah, fair enough, I can see that as well. Zealots, again, you do a tiny buff to them, you get 30 Zealots in the late game. They charge at something, hit it for 300 million, and it dies. So, yeah, trying to see how make those more balanced. And then balance changes, specific things like 0.75 second delay before siege tanks and siege mode can fire when being dropped by medevacs. So yeah, the ability for the medevacs to get in there and drop a siege tank and it fires instantly upon hitting the ground is something that is kind of difficult to deal with for other members, for anybody that's going against, really, against Terran, against Zerg, against Protoss. So it makes sense to kind of make it so it can't quite fire immediately. You kind of give the other player a chance to run up to it and try to kill it before it fires. Moving Overlord drop upgrade tech to Lair tech. Ah, bummer. As a Zerg player, that makes me sad. It was really, really fun to see Overlord drops getting Lings up into the main base of Protoss and Terran when they're so used to just walling off and being safe from them, that kind of thing. And now that it's gone, it's totally gone until Lair tech. So that basically means it's not going to show up at all anymore, which is a bummer. Colossi upgraded range from 8 to 9, which means they will now outrange Lurkers. I believe Lurkers do have 8 range, and Colossi have 9 now, so that's interesting. Continuing to test the new Ravager Corrosive Bile range upgrade. Again, Corrosive Bile, I just don't know that it's that great. It takes forever to land. It's so easy to micro against. It only does 60 damage, which isn't a whole lot, really, in the grand scheme of things. So making it shoot farther might be nice, maybe harder to dodge. Maybe you won't be quite as ready for it if you can't see the Ravager exactly when it shoots. I don't know. Continuing to test different numbers on Mothership Core overcharge being on pylons. So yeah, for a while there was an ability for Mothership Cores to use overcharge on a pylon. Are we talking about photon overcharge? I think we are. Being used on pylons. So like you basically throw a pylon in your enemy's base, overcharge it, and then it turns into this giant cannon that hits like a truck with a huge range. So I don't know how fair that is either, to be entirely honest. We'll see how that works out. So in conclusion, we are not saying all these things will make it into the beta for certain, but these are some examples of things we're currently testing right now. We will provide an additional update next week that clearly outlines the changes coming to the beta, but we wanted to give you this information as early as possible. Thanks for your continued testing and feedback in helping us develop the best Legacy of the Void possible. Edited by Tracent on the 28th, so yesterday at 11 in the morning Pacific time. Alright, so again, just a quick outline as to what to expect coming in Legacy of the Void. As a beta, things change a lot. This is something we're very aware of. And as a caster, it can be difficult to deal with this many patches this frequently. So bear with me. There will be some replays that come out that aren't quite on the latest patch, because I do like to have about a week buffer out there. But that's about it. So thanks so much for joining me on this community feedback update for August 28th. Thanks again, Davey, for getting this out to us. And this has been FalconPaladin. Until next time, you take care of yourself.